Charlie Owen with National Federation of Independent Businesses. Our Zoom calls are all complete. And then you have a guest as well. When you have a chance, Charlie, you can introduce your guest too. And thank you for your patience through our little computer glitches here, Zoom glitches, and through the lengthy testimony. But welcome, and the floor is yours.
Is it on now? Thank you. Yes, this is a new experience for many of us. I want to thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Charlie Owens. I'm the State Director for NFIB. We're a small business advocacy organization, about 10,000 members in Michigan, about 300,000 nationwide, and we've been around since 1943. It was about a year ago, Mr. Chair, you might recall, that I testified in front of this committee about the state of small business. In fact, it was March 27th of last year, to be exact. And the summary of that testimony was that we reported that small business optimism was breaking all records. Records we've been keeping for 40-plus years have been broken in a positive sense. And we summarized by saying that there was never a better time to start a business, grow a business, or locate a business in Michigan. I don't think I need to tell you those metrics have pretty much been turned upside down in the face of the challenge that we have here with us today. In fact, our most recent small business optimism index for April showed that sales expectations for the next 6 months dropped to their lowest levels in the index's 46-year history. If the economic turmoil caused by this pandemic continues any longer, we estimate about half of all small businesses could be in danger of failing. Now that's a nationwide metric. In Michigan it could be worse since we are lagging behind other states in reopening our economy. Since small business represents about half of the national and the state economy, that would be about 25% of our economy. Now I want to stop here because I know that when we testify on these issues, a lot of people are thinking, how can we be talking about the economy and sales and business when lives are at stake in this pandemic? And we do take that very seriously. Our answer is that there are relevant and real consequences of the decisions that are being made in response to this threat. Economic collapse, loss of jobs and livelihoods is not without serious life-threatening consequences over the long term for our citizens. In a perfect world, we do the best we can with the information we have. We believe that our governor, early in this situation, did so to the best of her ability. Her decisions were appropriate at the time. However, when she no longer sought the wise counsel of you, the legislature, things began to change. While we are pleased to see some movement this week from the governor in reopening Michigan's economy, the timelines and specific announcements of when businesses are allowed to open have been inconsistent and often arbitrary. Her plan is vague and open-ended, and the unlimited ability that she has assumed with the Emergency Powers Act under 1945 allows the governor alone to decide the fate of 25% of our economy into perpetuity. If you look at phase 6, that's pretty open-ended as far as when that would end. Our system of government was not allowed or was not created to allow this kind of power to be vested in one individual from any party ad infinitum. Over a month ago, the governor suggested that businesses should be ready and start thinking about what it would like to reopen. And I think you've heard a little bit from some of the business owners that testified here today. Business, and especially small business, need a date certain, not a nebulous time in the future to ponder. What business is going to step out and rehire their employees, purchase inventory, advertise, ramp up production with no date certain? It's not like flipping a switch to resume where they left off. We are lagging behind other states in getting our economy reopened. Who'd have ever thought that Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Toledo, Ohio would be destination places to go for Michigan residents? I know that a lot of you are proposing some very serious social programs and reforms to help our citizens through this difficult time. How do you propose to pay for that? I understand that there's a belief that the federal government will provide us with some money for that, and I think that they will. I also think that it will not last as long as the economic troubles that could befall us. Sooner or later, you're going to need a robust state economy to pay for these programs and to right this state where it needs to be. Let me conclude with a warning about the second wave. And I'm not talking about the one associated with the COVID virus. I'm talking about the one associated with the last recession. And I bring that up because memories are short. In 2010, we were the only state in the Union to have a decline in population in the United States Census. People were leaving this state. We had a brain drain. We had people taking talent and wealth and leaving this state. We'll have a second wave of that if we crash this economy. At the same time, we are trying to support programs to help people, and we decide that the way we're going to do that, if we don't get enough federal money, is to raise taxes on the citizens and businesses that remain. That will exacerbate the situation. More talent, more resources, more wealth, more people will leave this state. And we'll have a second wave of people leaving Michigan. That's something that wouldn't be helpful from the standpoint of the pandemic or from the well-being of our citizens. So I would just like to conclude before I bring up our member who has some things to share, and just say, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, we need to reopen Michigan small businesses safely now. Thank you. I'd like to, should I take questions or bring
Yeah,
up?
I think we have a couple that they come in your way that only you could answer. So I think first on our list is Senator Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to digest through some of the harsh points that were just made there. And I guess I'm confused because, you know, I've heard throughout this crisis, and I have a lot of empathy for outstate that has not had some of the same numbers that we've experienced in Oakland County, in Wayne County. Possibly a lot of it is due to the action that the governor took to isolate the situation and make sure there wasn't traveling back and forth and that everybody was in a safe spot. But my question is that what are the health considerations that you and your members are taking place to protect those in Metro Detroit? So Traverse City and the Upper Peninsula are ready to be opened. Does that just mean that the rest of the state should open up? I don't understand this logic of Michigan needs to open up now when there are those of us who still live in this health crisis, getting better, but nowhere near 0 cases or 0 fatalities. So what's the solution then to prevent a one-region recession or a one-region issue in Metro Detroit if we are unsafely opening up because elsewhere is ready to open up? I guess I don't understand the talking point of open up Michigan now when so very clearly there are places that I represent that are not ready for that and can't take the lead of other places in Michigan. So what protections are you proposing for those businesses that I presume you represent in Metro Detroit?
Yes. My response to that would be, I said open small businesses safely. So each particular situation has to be examined to be sure that on-site, in those small businesses, they can use personal protective equipment and safety procedures to keep their employees and the customers safe. If that can be done, they should be allowed to open. I'll give you an example since you asked. We had early in this pandemic businesses that had very little social contact with anybody or could be done in such a way that they didn't. I'm talking about the landscaping and the lawn services. People who are out in your yard, definitely more than 6 feet away from everybody, those could have been opened even in those areas that you have indicated that may have a higher caseload than others. Those are businesses that could have been safely opened long ago and practice safe practices. There are other businesses in your area and in these areas where the cases are higher than others, where that could apply as well. We're saying that that risk-based approach is more practical than a non-essential, essential categorization that may have been appropriate in the first few weeks of the pandemic, but quickly were not appropriate when we started to see the economic impacts.
I'll close out with this. I don't have any additional questions, but, you know, again, I think that this is a view from the outside of the crisis looking inward, and some of the things that, you know, are mentioned about accelerating businesses being open fall flat in my community where we're still in health crisis. And so I think that's where the disconnect is in the communities that I represent and the businesses in those communities that don't even have the confidence that they could safely reopen.
If they don't have the confidence that they can safely reopen, no one is forcing them to do that. No one is forcing people to leave their homes. If they have an immune system that's compromised, or if they're just not comfortable, they do not have to go out.
And let me move this forward a little bit. We know from our short-lived bipartisan work group that activities can be regulated. We've heard from the realtor or the retailers and from the Restaurant Association today that industries have their own protocols. We know that construction, manufacturing has its own protocols. Those have been opened up. I think the uncertainty comes when we open up 2 regions in the state. But if we have a spike in the southeast, does that mean we close them back down again? We don't know. There is no clear understanding of how this reopening works. So with that, I think the Jerry Anderson group came up with a great idea. Economic developers around the state are frightened of this regional approach. When you put Monroe in the same region as Wayne County, two different scenarios. You put Lapeer in the same region as Genesee County. You split up Senate districts, with announcements this week. There is a great uncertainty, but industries have demonstrated, and on many different levels, their ability to open. And it doesn't mandate that they open, it just gives them the opportunity. With that, Senator Losada.
Yes.
$61,000 people, 1 death. I appreciate the need to protect people, and people are protecting themselves. They're staying home, and I don't disregard their feelings as far as, if they're scared, then stay home and protect yourself. But I also know that more and more I drive around the lakes in my district, and there are Illinois people everywhere. Are they not potentially bringing a virus over to my district? They're allowed to go anywhere. And I don't disagree with allowing them to come to their second homes, but they're not really shopping in my district. I have a district of numerous small businesses. That's the majority of my district. It's the lifeblood of my district. And these people are suffering. They are ready to open and open safely. And I don't want them to open if they can't open safely and protect people. But the bottom line is, I mean, it can't be all or nothing. I mean, we've got to balance this, and we've got to look at everything, and we've got to respect everyone's, different districts. Why is the UP open? Why is Traverse City open? Why is that area open? Why isn't my area open? With flooding of Illinois people this weekend, Indiana, people just go to Indiana over the border to do their shopping. We're supporting Indiana now where I live. So just know the not only the fear of COVID-19, which Southeast Michigan definitely has, but the fear of how are you going to survive, how are you going to be able to pay your bills, how are you going to be able to support your family. So I think we just need to really think about everything and not just staying closed. And I can guarantee you that I would not, if this governor were a Republican, I would be saying the same thing. I would not be supporting staying closed and falling in line with whatever this governor had to say. I'm looking out for the best interest of my district. I'm looking out for the best interest of my state. But again, being compassionate to those areas that really have hurt and are still hurting. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And as we opened up our Economic Development Committee in the beginning of this term, we allowed all the members to describe their districts a little bit, so we thank you for sharing a little bit about your district with us. Before I go to Senator McMorrow's question, I hope you'll hold that, and then we'll bring your guest up if you could. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time, and then we're already running a little bit later than I would have normally hoped. So if you...
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Nevin Gross with RLCG Grand Rapids, Great Lakes, and he will explain to you what he does, and we'll hear from him. Yeah, let me wipe it down first here. I don't know if I was supposed to wipe that.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Nevin Gross. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I own a small boutique consulting firm specializing in growing value and managing transitions for privately held small businesses. My company's approach to consulting embeds us into the daily operations of our many clients. So today I testify in front of you representing not only myself, but the many small business owners throughout the state that we serve that continue to fight despite the odds against them. I respectfully urge our state government to immediately take reasonable action towards opening our business economy throughout the state and help eliminate the incorrect perception that business can simply hold our breath until this virus is contained. Many debates have formed over the last several weeks, issues that only time will resolve. However, I believe we can all agree on one basic fact. A strong business community that puts people to work is critical to reopen our state safely and effectively. Therefore, it's important we do everything possible to get our small business community operating. If the economic turmoil caused by this pandemic lasts through Memorial Day, which seems certain, about half of the small businesses in this great state could be in danger of failing. And if it lasts to Labor Day, we're looking at more than 6 in 10 could fail. A paused business economy will not survive to the end of this crisis. It is fully extinguished. Therefore, we need to get opened immediately so long as they can operate in a safe manner. The urgency felt in the small business community is real because we understand how strenuous the work of reopening business is. Reopening is no small feat. It takes time and energy. There's no magic operational light switch that can simply be reactivated. In fact, we'll be burdened with the same new protocols and open activities that we saw Ford accomplish over the last month. But in our reality, we don't have access to a team of engineers, consultants, and technical specialists to open. We too must investigate and implement the new safety measures to keep workers and customers safe, procure the required PPE, and train employees on the correct use and importance of the equipment, locate and get status and train employees on the new work conditions, hire to replace workers unable to and willing to come back to work, investigate the health and capability of our supply chain, purchase and receive required raw materials to continue operations, determine jobs that exist for the companies still in business, plan work and get realistic capacity projections, and the list goes on. This is all assuming that the business has access to the money needed to open and will be able to run at a level that generates a profit. I certainly respect and appreciate the government's leadership in the opening days of the virus, but the time is now to fight the disease, not as political foes, but the way the Constitution was tenant with a partnership and shared responsibility the entire government, both branches. I agree with the governor that this virus is both aggressive and persistent, and we must be just as aggressive and persistent. In our mind, as a small business owners, that means we need the full access to the capability, the talent, and the representation of the entire state government. Splinter approaches with politics and executive orders are no longer the appropriate approach to best fight this virus, especially when the stakes are this high. The time is now to allow business owners to use their innovative spirit to start the long journey to recovery. Release our business owners to help fight and take our state back. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony. And I was just talking to somebody on the sidewalk today leaving the Capitol, and I just hope that at some point that, as the state of Michigan, that we as residents, constituents, leaders, that we all begin to understand that this is an economic ecosystem, that everything depends on everything.
Right.
And, the small business is really the root of this, the foundation. And from this, everything else springs. Small and large businesses, it's the economy. And this is where we drive our incomes and our discretionary income when we're able to, as families, to buy things beyond our everyday needs. And this is where government derives its revenue as well. And when we tank one end of it, that this whole tree, this big old oak tree of an economy we have here begins to shrivel and die. And the quicker we invest into this root system, I think we're the better off we're going to be. Let me toss, if you're still would like to, Senator McMorrow, ask your question first.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, it is a bit more of a statement and an appeal as we continue the committee process, because it is challenging for those of us who have been serving here for a year and a half, who have never even received a committee hearing on any bill they have ever introduced, to hear that the legislature has been sidelined and is not a part of the conversation. I will say my experience throughout this pandemic, when I have had bipartisan conversations with some of my colleagues, when I have been a part of work groups, when I'm working with small business owners, is the most collaborative I've ever experienced. And I think that that's an important distinction. And I don't think we're going to be able to move forward. Yes, this is a pandemic and an economic crisis, the likes of which hopefully we will never see again. But we will not move forward if we are using this space to make these statements that you immediately felt the tension grow. Everybody went to their sides immediately. And that's not the experience that I've had throughout this pandemic. We all have within our caucus designated people who take feedback and questions up to the administration, and frankly, many of them from my district, from Rochester Hills to Royal Oak, have been about landscaping, garden centers early on, and those were some of the first things to be re-implemented. And they were balanced, because I had landscapers that were afraid to go back to work, but wanted to do it in a responsible way. And for my constituents, the fact that that was responded to is the first time in a year and a half that I have been here that I have felt like my constituents have been a part of the conversation. So my plea to everybody, to anybody who comes in front of this committee, I know I'm a member of the minority party, but I am the Democratic vice chair, is that we put that aside and put together solutions like we are having in all of these conversations on the side. Let's draft legislation, let's debate them, and let's solve this thing together.
I appreciate those comments. I was in the minority for 4 years, so I know exactly how you feel. I think the biggest difference is that today, while you explained that you have access to the governor's office and that you're getting responses, that's not true for the legislature as an institution. And that's what we are interested in defending as well. So your comments are well taken, and I think that guests will be well advised to take your advice. But there are always two sides to this coin. With that, I'll turn this over to Senator Geis for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. So I'm curious, I guess for both of you, that as business owners, I'll wait. You done? Thank you. As business owners, and in seeing this situation progress, you know, you talked about Ford not being Ford and having a team of engineers to come up with ways to do other things. My husband happens to be one of those Ford engineers. So we've been living with this for quite some time. Absolutely. In my household. Yep. It's not that they have a team of engineers who were able to help them retool and be part of the solution, but it's because they were innovative. And it's something that I think all of us do here. When there's an accident on 127, we don't just sit there in traffic and wait. We come up with another way. We come up with an off-ramp. We have a plan B. All of us women in here know they're about plan Bs and plan Cs for escape routes when it comes to other situations in our lives. So why, as business owners, and hopefully this will be a cautionary tale for you guys, the business community, small biz, large biz, the entire business community, and it should be a cautionary tale for all of us, that instead of just waiting for whatever it is that's going to happen next, that you have a plan B, that you have some way to be innovative, that you are like Griffin Claw and was able to turn your existing stream of business into something else. So that I think that, yeah, there's a lot of validity in what you're saying and what everyone who came before us has said today in terms of fear, uncertainty. How are you going to get ramped back up? How are you going to go back to normal? There ain't no normal. We're not going back to normal. This is a new reality in one way, shape, or form. And I think that as business owners who the consumers rely on for things that we need and want, it's also incumbent upon you guys to have had maybe not the foresight to see it coming, because none of us saw this coming, but to have come up with what is your off-ramp. And I don't mean that in the business sense of like, how are you going to get out of it? Yep. I mean, what is your plan B? What is your plan C if necessary? How are you going to be innovative? Because innovation is what got you to being that business owner to begin with, unless you're making the same widget that someone else is making, right? Innovation and all of that entrepreneurial spirit is why you guys do what you do. It's what makes you tick. So to say that, oh, we have to keep doing the same thing, rather than thinking about how are we going to function in the new normal? How are we going to exist in whatever that space is part of what you guys should be also doing.
Correct.
And part of what, yes, we as a legislature should be trying to figure out how do we help you with. But that I guess I'm really frustrated with some of the very things that you know, my colleague from I'm wedged. I'm in an Oakland County sandwich over here. You know, said, and I think there's a lot of there's some disingenuity there, and I really hope that as we go forward through this, we can help you guys as the business community come up with what your new normal looks like in a way that is obviously safe, especially for your employees, many of whom from where we're from are scared. And quite honestly, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to want to go travel to some of the places where the rest of y'all are from, quite frankly. So the blaming of the executive branch, I think, really needs to stop.
Fair enough. So, I appreciate, I guess that wasn't, I appreciate the statement. My intention was not to blame anybody. I have no desire to look into the past. I'm only looking for the future. I'm not here to ask anybody for anything. The government will do what it does to help the most vulnerable, and we respect that. What I'm here to ask is that to be innovative for a small business, and I've been in business, my family has owned businesses for over 35 years in the state. I've owned businesses myself in the city. I have good friends in the city. I've owned businesses in Grand Rapids and have colleagues and people that I care about throughout the state. So when my intention was not to blame anybody. My intention was to be innovative. We need to do that at work. It is not a theory exercise. We have to stress test the model that we develop. Then we have to bring people in. We have to test that model at 25% capacity, 50% capacity, 75% capacity, find out what works, and we need to make changes. That's what we need to do. Innovation is very important. When I brought Ford because they stayed engaged the entire time. Then they went into ventilators. Well, they were learning. They were not sitting at home thinking of what the next thing is to do. They were there doing it. So we're asking for the same opportunity for small business to be able to do that.
Thank you for that. And, you know, their businesses are indeed innovative, but they're focused on their core competencies as well. And once you find your lane, you want to make sure that you can do business in that lane. And I think that it's fair to point out that businesses don't have that luxury of being in their own lane when they don't know what the rules are. Right. And so we need clarity. That's been an issue for the last several weeks. And I think it was Senator McMarr that brought up switching things up and that innovation idea. When Stroh's Brewing Company, they faced prohibition, they started making ice cream. It was great. General Motors used to make refrigerators. They don't anymore. That's not their core competency. Ford may be making ventilators now, but 2 years from now, it's likely that they're not going to be making ventilators. They're just doing what they can to survive and help out where they can. And so we appreciate your testimony. We're going to delve deeper into best practices from around as I mentioned, from around the region. We will continue the push to define what safe openings are, and we hope that those happen quickly and without further business for the committee. This committee is adjourned.